Amy, welcome to Dying to Live. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really, really excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you too.
I think we met, briefly probably, and we're kind of around each other maybe like 10 years ago at Mountain Film in Telluride. Does that sound right to you?
Was it that long ago?
I think so.
That's nuts. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. I think my first mountain film was 2010.
Mine too. So that was
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Wow. That's nuts. Um,
Yeah.
Good. Did you have your sleeves in? I love your tats.
Oh, thank you so much. No,
Yeah.
they're relatively new, like in the last
Yeah.
maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Okay, nice. And I guess they're not technically sleeves if they're not. Anyway, I'm learning. I'm just adding on myself.
Oh, I saw that the other day. Yay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I this one is in process and
I love it.
we ran out of time, so I have like probably 5 more sittings to do for it. And then I
Wow.
think that will qualify as a sleeve. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Awesome.
I what I remember from you about you when I first encountered you at Mountain Film was just seeing you and some of the rest of the filmmakers and not really having been privy to that world before. And just for anyone who doesn't know, Mountain Film in Telluride is this amazing film festival that brings together storytellers and filmmakers that are telling stories that are meaningful in the world. So definitely, climate change, social justice issues, and a whole range of other things. People that are really passionate about the stories they're telling. And I remember seeing you and thinking, oh, she's so cool. She's doing all these cool things and telling these stories. And I was just really impressed with how elegantly you presented yourself there and the different things that you were doing. And then to watch you over the last 10 years and watch your career progress and all the different directions you've taken it has been really awesome. So thanks for sharing that with us through Instagram and your website and other places.
Thanks for paying attention. A lot of times I think that no one does. And I kind of have to, go into it that way. but for someone like you to tune in, I appreciate that a lot. And you're a lot kinder. You have a kinder vision of the 10-year-old, not 10-year-old, the version of me 10 years ago than I think I've had recently. So, but we can get into that later.
Yeah. I was a little starstruck, so I'll be interested to hear what your perspective is on that. But maybe first we could start with, you have a really interesting kind of origin story, and I'd love for you to be able to tell it for everybody, and then to have us talk about it a little bit because it's really timely with everything that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, I was born in Bandung, Indonesia in 1978. And I was born to a single young Indonesian woman who wasn't ready to be a mom. So her best friend was aware of my parents. My dad was doing work in Jakarta at the time. He was a geographer and a professor at the University of Kentucky. I think he just started at UK that year and focused all of his research in Southeast Asia. And my parents, originally from Pennsylvania, loved Southeast Asia. So they were there. My mom had a lot of miscarriages and really wanted nothing more than to be a mother. So they decided that on this trip, they would come home with a baby Asian girl. And we were connected through the US Embassy in Jakarta. And I think it was one of these situations where it was just like all over the place, total roller coaster. They didn't think it was gonna come through, and then boom, they get a call and they're like, can you come pick up your daughter now?
Wow.
They took a drawer out of a dresser in the house and like kind of tried to seat belt buckle it in, and then picked me up and like stuffed me in it with a bunch of blankets. I was tiny. I was probably 4 pounds. I was a month old. I was born early. And I was in an incubator, I believe, for the first month of my life. So anyway, so they got me. I'm half Indonesian, half British. And I, a few months later, we flew home to the States, and I was naturalized and raised in white suburbia, and that's the short, simple version.
Wow. Well, first of all, we have a lot of things in common because my parents are also from Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
and I was also born a month early and
Oh,
was very small as a baby. So that's interesting. Um, and you and I are both parents too. So can you imagine, even when you're expecting to take a baby home, all of these trials and tribulations, and then being told, oh, hi, you have a baby now, so come get her. I can't, it's mind blowing.
yeah. My mom's had, interesting things to share about that. And you can see that. You can see that in the photos of her, because there are photographs of them holding me in the first night I came to them, and then the next day. And she's just got this look in her eyes like, oh my God, like what is happening? And I think she has this story where she had to run errands. She couldn't take me along. This was, I don't know, a week or a few weeks in. And she had to leave me with the maids. And she got back and realized she was so upset that she'd been away and she hadn't been there. And that's when the bond finally happened. And I think a lot of adoptive parents have stories like that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I also lived in Lexington, actually Georgetown, for about a year. So
Okay.
I know the place where you where you grew up, and I'm imagining. Well, I'd love to hear what it was like, and if because you grew up there from birth, basically, or infancy, how did people receive you? Were you the brown kid? Were you understood as white? How did that work for you?
Yeah. Um, yeah, the timing of this conversation is so interesting, because I've had to get clear on a lot of this just in the last few months.
Oh.
So yeah, it's funny. We always made fun, I don't know. My dad looked Asian. You know,
Hmm.
he's white. I don't know what his genealogy is. I think there might be African American in there. He has one remaining sibling. He'd probably be horrified by that fact.
Mm.
But so, we never did any digging into that side of his family tree, but he looked Asian. So, um, um, and my parents had brown hair, and so we kind of shared these physical features. So people just assumed I was their daughter. And more often than not, they were surprised to hear that I was adopted. White people, I was white passing for white people.
Mm-hmm.
When I interacted with people of color, they usually saw it in me.
Mm.
But I was surrounded, most of my friends were white. We lived in white suburbia.
Mm-hmm.
I went to schools that were mixed, racially mixed, but definitely segregated.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think, my parents, I don't remember a day that they told me I was adopted. I always knew. So from, as early as I was picking up language and story, I knew that this was part of me. And I loved the story. I loved that I had a birth mother who was selfless enough to let me go. I
Mm-hmm.
loved that I landed with this family that just loved me and wanted me and could provide for me. And I had a great childhood. There's magic in it. We traveled a lot for my dad's work. So, I was really grateful for those things. But I loved the way our family was built. I thought it was really special. I thought the adoption was really special. And I wanted to share that. And I thought my heritage was special, but people didn't really understand it. And so there are a lot of times where I just kind of shut it down
Mm-hmm.
because it was easier for people to comprehend if they could just believe that I was white, um, and that I belonged to my parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, especially as a kid, I can imagine that would be the easy way to navigate things for sure. You said something really beautiful a minute ago, that your birth mom was selfless enough to let you go. That statement has a magnitude to it. And I'm not adopted, and I can't put myself in the shoes of someone that has been adopted, but that seems really like a prolific understanding to have as
Yeah.
the child.
And you know what? I want to, I want to make sure that what doesn't get What isn't associated with that line is that it's selfish to keep a child if you are a struggling single mom.
Yes,
That's
yes.
not what I'm saying with her. I just think it takes, so when I was 22, I got pregnant before I was ready to be a mom. And because I had a positive experience with adoption myself, I was very confident going through with the pregnancy and then placing my birth son for adoption. He's amazing. He just turned 20 today. This is his birthday. Oh my God.
Wow.
And he's going to the University of South Florida. It's awesome. But so I know as a birth mother who let go of a child, that it takes a lot of courage. It takes, and I'm not trying to sound heroic here, but it takes courage and strength to go through with that. And you have to be really, really clear that this is not my time to parent this child. And there's another couple. So I guess when I say that, I might be projecting my experience even on her a little bit. But I think as a kid, even I was grateful that maybe this is a better way of saying it. Sorry, I'm all over the place here. I was grateful that she had the awareness that someone else could give me a better life, an opportunity. So maybe it wasn't even selflessness. Maybe it was just about that awareness and the desire for her child to have more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where I was going with that too was the beauty in seeing that for what it is. And I would imagine it would be very easy to attach a lot of other things to that happening. And so it's just kind of like an eagle eye view of that, which is really beautiful for you to have. So thank you for sharing that. And then with your parents, and really crazy that it is your birth son's birthday today too.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you travel a lot with your parents then when you were younger?
I did. So, and yeah, so my, as much as I can get a little cynical about like my white suburban upbringing, it was actually way more dynamic than that. So my dad, again, was a geographer who focused his research in Southeast Asia. So, whether it was sabbatical or a grant or, just the summer where he could break away from the university and do what he really wanted to do, we were just, I want to say most of my summers were overseas. So when I was 4, we lived in Medan, Indonesia for a year. When I was 7, we lived in Singapore. Wow. And that was really neat. It was definitely an American experience because I went to the Singapore American School. My boyfriend that year was the son of the ambassador to Singapore.
Wow, fancy.
But they were good kids. They were good, and God, they were good kids. And it was hard to come back to the States that next year because just socially it was such a different vibe here. But when I was 10, 11, 12, 15, we were back in Southeast Asia. One summer was in New Zealand, which was amazing.
Wow.
And then I think I didn't get back to Southeast Asia until I graduated with a grant that took me over there from Indiana University. So did
all of that travel then? It seems like it must have affected your career, has kind of followed that path as well in terms of following stories where they go and seeking them out and things.
Yeah, I very early I understood that. My dad took a traditional and academic route and was very successful with it. He was what do you call it? He hit some level of like professorship. Tenure. I don't want. Yeah, but there's a name. Anyway, he was very well known in his field, and he really climbed that ladder very well. But he was also very creative with the way he pieced together his work, and he worked really hard at it. And it was not something he could separate from his life. So I observed that early on, and I it wasn't a traditional view of a career for me. And I also knew that if he didn't have this work, there's no way we would be traveling and having these experiences. So I knew that whatever I was going to do as an adult would have to involve work that took me places, and get someone else to pay for it. Because, otherwise it's hard to, afford.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that takes us into this idea of the life prescription and the kind of ways that we're mostly, I think, subconsciously indoctrinated into believing life has to be a certain way as we grow up and come into young adulthood. And so, and I talk about it a lot. So for me, it was, there was kind of this idea that you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you have the white picket fence, and then you die. That's it. And there wasn't a lot of talk or discussion in my house growing up about things that are adventurous or, feeding your passion, which I guess isn't quite true. Because my mom and my stepdad did follow their dreams a couple different times in a couple different ways. But other than that, it was pretty, rote. And I think it's really that moment when somebody realizes, oh, wait, like I don't have to follow this prescription. I can write my own prescription. And this can be anything that I want it to be, is a really interesting spot to be in. So I wanted to talk about yours because you had this wonderful exposure and it kind of fed into this non-traditional view of what a career might be. And you've done all these amazing things with it. But what was your life prescription? Would you say it was something around what we've talked about? Was it different? And then how has that like ebbed and flowed as you've gotten older?
Yeah, it's never been a part of my personality to just follow a formula for following the sake of following the formula. So some of that stuff has just never existed in me, period. And, at the same time, I think there was tension with that and also wanting to be accepted and wanting to succeed the way that I knew society and my parents, saw as success. So, I took, it started out as a pretty traditional path. I went to college, graduated in 4 years, got a grant, kickstarted a journalism career that kind of quickly turned into just advocacy editorial. So I moved to DC and worked on magazines where we told conservation stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't get really kind of out of the box until I made the really pretty reckless leap at the time into filmmaking full time. And that was 2011. No. Sorry, I made my first films in 2011. I was still working at the magazine. It was 2013 when I let go of the desk job. But, and at that time too, I remember looking at, these amazing filmmakers who, were 4+ years younger than me, who didn't take that traditional path, and they were so far advanced in their filmmaking career. And I was envious of that. And I questioned if I should have stayed on, in that structured world for as long as I did. But, there was a lot of room to kind of make safer mistakes there where, not everything was on the line. Like I knew I could still bring in a paycheck every 2 weeks. And I learned to work with, on staff with a lot of people. Those skills have really been important. And I can tell when they're missing from a freelancer. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm grateful for kind of the traditional things, but I'm really glad to be out of it now.
Yeah. And maybe we should just qualify too. Traditional is great if that's your bag. If that's not your bag and you're stuck in it, then that can be really, really, really painful. So, that's more the thing is if that's not the way that your soul fire is lit, then understanding there are other paths is that permission can be really empowering. But I think there's a lot of value too in sticking with the thing that is providing the security and maybe some skills that couldn't be obtained elsewhere, and then knowing when to let that go. And it sounds like that's what happened with you. Or was juggling both things like too much and too painful at one point? You just had to say, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had this amazing job at the National Parks Conservation Association. I was there for 9 years. I had a great boss who believed in me, and really pushed me creatively and helped me attune my values and accountability and all those things, right, that you want to show up with. And part of that job towards the end, I got to take a sabbatical, and I went to Yosemite and made my first 2 shorts, and one of them got into mountain film, which was awesome. But when I screened that one at Mountain Film, I was 8 months pregnant. And getting those films to the finish line was a full-time job on top of my full-time job. And then my daughter was born, and I was juggling too much. So it was really, the timing was what it had to be.
Yeah.
If I were advising someone on making that transition, I'd say, like, okay, make sure you've got like a good nest egg, or you really understand the business before you make that shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably
a little risky.
It had to be. Yeah.
And since you mentioned it, so motherhood can change us, and how has that shaped you or changed you, either the first time or the second time or both? It's just can be so prolifically impactful. I know it has been for me.
Mm-hmm. The first time I was so young, and I was so certain what needed to happen. There was definitely pain and loss and mourning that I had to deal with after, I handed Wyatt to his parents, but it was just so right. So I feel like that almost doesn't count in the mother category. For me, at least. When Era was born, that was powerful. She's powerful. It's tough. I have a partner. We do not live together right now. So I am very much a single mother, which is expensive and busy and exhausting. I'm lucky that I have a daughter who fits really well into my life. We have a lot in common. She's super adaptable. She's really laid back. She's really adventurous. She's creative. She's an artist. She's a storyteller. She's all these things that we can come together and really like collaborate on life and films even. But it's fucking hard. Am I allowed to use that word? It's really fucking hard.
Believe me.
But I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I just, and honestly, the times that I'm forced to turn it off and be with her, I'm grateful for that, because I need those times to reset. I don't have the ability to, I do, I can sit and crank for 15 hours on an edit if I have to, but it's way healthier to have this, bright little being come into the mix and like completely shift my head in another direction.
Oh, totally. So grounding. They're so grounding. And also, for me, my daughter really reminds me of the aspects of rest and play that are important that I just don't adopt enough for myself.
Yeah. Rest is a really big theme for me right now.
Oh, nice.
So I'm feeling you on that. Yeah. So are you saying you see that your daughter's modeling that for you? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And really she, since COVID, I used to think of her as an extroverted introvert, and now I think of her as just an introvert. And she also has realized, oh, I am really introverted, and I'm actually really happy when have enough solo time and enough rest time, and I can, sit in bed and read 3 books and what have you. And it helps also amplify her social time, and she gets more out of that as well. But I see her having the boundaries and saying when enough is enough and things like that. She's 13, so it's a really great time to learn that kind of thing. And so, yes, she's my biggest teacher, and I'm learning a lot right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds like a great 13-year-old to be living with. compared to some alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, being housebound with her as she's transitioned from 12 to 13 has been really interesting. Because there was a lot of togetherness and a lot of hugs and a lot of one-on-one time that she's not interested in now. And it's right on time, but it's also, I have her every other week and I'm also single. So it's just her and I, which means it's just me in the house when she's here because she's in her room. And that has been something to also have a little grief about, and is a little bit lonely, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I haven't experienced it yet, but I've read about it and I'm preparing myself.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of good resources. But I want to talk about the really cool thing that you and Era are doing right now. So we talk about the film.
Yeah. So I think it first dropped into my head 2 years ago. The North Face was announcing a grant for a 47-minute film for a female filmmaker. And at the time, I had been struck with the idea that despite living in similar neighborhoods, Era's childhood looked very different from mine. I wasn't calling her in for dinner. She wasn't outside getting dirt under her nails, playing with her friends all day in the summer. Like, that just wasn't happening. So I started kind of developing this loose film about her and how we'd lost a connection to something, and I wasn't quite sure what that was. Year and a half later, COVID hits, and everything shuts down. And at the time, we were living in this very planned community off of a golf course, and the golf course closed. So we started hopping the fence and going out on the golf course and bringing our journals and like having races. And then everyone started howling at 8:00. And I was like, sweet, I think this is it. I think like all my angst about living here and Era's childhood it's okay because we're all getting a little wild now. And actually, in a strange way, like we actually built some community in that time. She actually found some friends in the neighborhood and they were super tight all summer. It didn't actually fix the feelings I had inside. I had to keep digging. And then Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd were the kind of, not even the first three, but the first three in the wave of the new BLM uprising. And I started to understand that my discomfort was the system I was a part of. And the farce of white suburbia that I was raising my daughter in.
Ooh, I just got chills. Okay. Yeah, that's powerful.
And it was a really uncomfortable discovery. And I had my own white fragility that was flaring up as part of this, and my own identity crisis, not really understanding where I fit into that bigger story. As a half Indonesian who's raised white. But once I sat with that and accepted these things and forgave myself, it became really, really clear where I could start doing my work. And I wasn't going to do it without Era being involved. So all this time we're filming, and the film was evolving. And we ended up moving out of the neighborhood in September, not far away, but it was an important move. And wrapped the film shooting shortly after that, and we're editing now. So that's the
beautiful. Yeah. And it's through her lens?
Both. I mean, more through mine. I really wanted it to be through hers. But as it became so much bigger about racism in the country, there's only so much you can ask an 8-year-old to articulate. So, I realized that, you write what you know, right? Like, tell the story that you know. One way that I knew I could stay on my side of the line and own this was if I did it from my own personal experience and perspective. So I had to get really honest about my part in it. And so we kind of start off together, and then we diverge, and then we come back together at the end.
Oh, that's kind of mimics what happens with parents and kids in life in general. So I think that's really beautiful. When and where are we going to be able to see it?
Good question. I have a June deadline. We're going to submit to Doc NYC. Who knows? It'd be amazing to get in there. That's not till, I think, the fall. Like, I want to say it's November or something. It's really, really late.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's going to be, it feels like a festival film to me. Beyond that, I don't know. It'd be great if we could stream it somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's a weird market, I think, for shorts. I don't really understand it yet.
Okay.
And it's such a personal film. Like, it almost doesn't even belong in the doc category in a way. And so I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll make sure that people know where to find you so that they can follow along and see it come to life, along with, all of your other work as well, before we are done here today. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. One thing that I wanted to do with you before we sign off, that I haven't done this before, but I just got the We're Not Really Strangers. It's a game, but it's also just a deck of thought-provoking cards to deepen your knowledge of other people. And there's 3 levels of cards. And the first one is somebody you don't know that well or don't have, a deep friendship or relationship with. And I wanted to share some 3 questions, and I've picked them, but I haven't digested them. So you and I would both answer them. And it'll be really interesting to compare answers and perceptions. Okay. You game for that?
Totally down.
Okay. We'll start out with a funny one. Rate your dancing skills on a scale of 1 to 10. And on the count of 3, we have to say our answers out loud. Okay?
Okay.
Rating our dancing skills. 1, 2, 3.
7.
3.
Wait. With 10 being the...
10 is the best.
Okay, 10 is the best. Okay. 3.
Terrible. Oh, yeah.
That's hilarious.
But I like your 7.
I think I'm a pretty confident 7. I wish I were higher, but...
It's always a lot of dancing at mountain film too, so that probably helps. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next one. And some of these are about yourself and some of these are about other people. So we kind of have one of each left. We are both doing this. So make an assumption about me and I will make an assumption about you.
Cool. Okay.
Okay.
All right. How do we share this?
Do you want to go first or do you want me to?
You go first. I feel it. Okay, you go first.
Okay.
Sounds uncomfortable.
It's supposed to be. That's the point.
Yeah. Okay.
My assumption is that you are a really grounded and patient person.
Do I respond to that or tell you my assumption?
Maybe respond and then you can tell me your assumption.
Okay. Sometimes I can spin around up here and be really impatient. No, I think I guess it depends on what we're being patient about. I'm often, I was gonna say, so I'm usually more patient with people than I am with myself. It's not totally true, depending on the person. I try to be. I'll just say that. I try to be.
Yeah, your energy is very much that today. So that's where that came from.
Okay, thanks. That's okay. So my assumption about you is that you have this rocking job for Eddie Bauer and finances are not a concern.
Oh, wow. Whoa.
I feel shitty saying that out loud.
No,
it's a really
that's
personal thing, and it's none of my business.
I can see that. I can see that. I think, back on the whole subject of also of whiteness and privilege, I'm sure that comes through. And just, given my work title alone, I'm sure that is an assumption that a lot of people make. I would say that, in addition to Eddie Bauer, I have 2 other businesses that I'm starting. And so it was really resonating with me what you were saying earlier about your early start, and what that was like for you. And so it's an interesting place to be, is where I'm going to leave that one.
Yeah. I feel like I need to apologize for that, because I recognize how unsure it can be, and how if it is true, that's awesome. And I also come from privilege with, I could not have gone under contract on this house without my mom's help. Mm-hmm. No way. And I'm really lucky to have a parent who can support me in that way.
Yeah. I'm
having to rely on my mom to get back in the housing market here is humbling, but hugely privileged too. So anyway, money's a weird thing for me right now.
Yeah, no apology necessary. I think these are great conversations to have, and I want this place and this podcast to be a safe space to have lots of different kinds of conversations. So no apologies. Plus, that's what this deck is for and what we're supposed to get to today. So here we are.
All right.
Then you're really going to love this one. And this is kind of one-sided, but I guess this is the card. So do you think I intimidate others? Why or why not?
Ooh. Oh, totally.
No, take your time in answering.
No, I mean, and that's like, I hope that feels flattering. I think, I mean, who knows what others are, right? Like, who knows? I just know that my younger self would often feel intimidated by women who knew exactly who they are.
Oh, wow. That is flattering.
And yeah, right. So that's why I have a quick answer for that. I think that can be intimidating to people who don't have that stability in themselves.
Wow, that is really nice to hear. Thank you. Thank you for reflecting that. That I'm actually tearing up a little bit, because I do feel that in most scenarios, but there's some upheaval right now in my life, and to have that still come through is really meaningful to hear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got you.
Okay. Well, one thing that I wanted to see if you would benefit the audience with is kind of something that you would share with people that have a passion or an interest and want to make that passion the way that they make their living. And you kind of said it earlier, like have a plan or a nest egg or watch what you take on. But are there other things that you might tell people that would be beneficial for them to think about?
Yeah, I'm in a place in my career, and I feel like I'm on the cusp of making this all work. After what is it, 2021, first film was in 2011. So after 10 years of doing this, I think I'm on the cusp of figuring out how to make it sustainable. And I don't have a choice. I have to do that now, because I'm literally going to be a homeowner again here shortly, and I have a daughter to raise, and all that stuff. And I think the thing that I have noticed is there are all these places where you feel like you have to just work yourself to total depletion to earn the stability and sustainability that we all need in our professional lives and our lives. But I'm starting to open to the idea that if I just stay so focused on what I think I'm here to do, and I commit to that no matter what, that the rest is going to fall into place. And I have these, it's not going to sound really bold or woo-woo, but you know, these experiences and meditations where I feel like I can go into my problems and manipulate the energy so that it goes in the direction that I want it to go in. And I think I'm not talking about the law of attraction or whatever that those theories are, where it's like, I want $3 million and I'm going to make it happen by Friday out of thin air. Like I think that's bullshit.
It is, yes.
But I do think that like the more you can tune in with yourself and align with what you know deep down you're supposed to be doing, then the stability follows. And you know, I have an amazing therapist. She calls herself a few things, but I'm actually crediting her as a mom mentor on my film with Era, bringing her onto my next feature doc too. But you know, she was just saying the other day, you know, money's an energy, and yes, it's a resource, and yes, it's part of the system. And I think it's when things are part of the system and you feel like the system isn't working for you, and it's not working for so many people, and it feels unjust, that you can get really messy and nuanced, and then money becomes like this negative thing for me. These are my ups and downs with it. But it's an energy, and there's flow to it, and there's life to it. And okay, so your question was people with a passion, and I just think, you know, committing to that passion at all costs, while not being like an idiot about it. Like you have to have a business plan. You've got to have a network. You have to ask for things and stand up for yourself and demand that day rate that you know you deserve, and turn away the stuff that doesn't align with that. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to my own advice, because it's just a hard thing to do. You know, if you're an artist or you're taking a leap in a direction that isn't totally defined or necessarily supported by society, it's so scary. But
yeah.
But I have to keep believing for myself that as long as I stay aligned, as long as I keep on that frequency that I know I belong on, it's gonna work.
Yeah. I subscribe to that as well, wholeheartedly. And where manifestation, as it has become so popular in the past, however long, falls down, is that it has a tendency to purport itself as the be all and end all, when it's really a piece of the whole, and the whole includes the work that you have to do to get there. But it doesn't have to be the work that society has told us we need to kill ourselves to do to be successful, to your point earlier. But the piece of knowing that this is your path, and believing and listening to the hum of your soul when you think about that passion and turning it into work, and you have conversations about it, and you can feel the energy swell and your soul fire burn. Following that is like at least half of it, maybe more. That's huge, because I think we can all have a tendency, especially with this traditional life prescription thing, to throw that out the window if it doesn't fit a certain description of how we're supposed to be. And the truth is that just limits you and your potential. And so I love your advice.
You know, Kristen, I just want to go back to a theme that came up real quickly, and the idea of rest. And I know you're not feeling super hot. Okay, if I say this after your vaccine shot, and I know how much energy it's probably taking for you to just like sit here and talk to me right now and do all the things you do for the podcast. But I think too, like, I mean, right, again, I grew up with a father who worked through the weekends and came home late, and it made him happy. I think like that's the only way he knew to be. And I think there was probably stuff in himself that he was trying to just shut down by working so much and climbing that ladder. You know, with Era's film, there are days where, you know, like my brain was like, you should like lock yourself in the editing cave and not leave until you've figured out the scene. But I had to just go for a walk, or, you know, and I think just like constantly asking, what do I need right now? what do I need right now? And letting that be the thing that determines what your workday looks like. And even like I had this experience the other day where I could just feel my spirit just stepping back and resting.
Yeah.
While I watched my body and my brain do all these busy things that I had to do.
Yeah.
It's like I could like separate from or keep my energy resting while all the shit got done. Mm-hmm. And I, you know, I think too, like, we see time as so linear and it feels that way and it looks that way and it seems like this straight path that has a beginning and an end. But the more we can experience it as being more layered than that, I think that like you can manipulate it. Like you can manipulate this stuff. So anyway.
Yeah, you really can. I love the question, what do I need right now? Especially as women and moms, that can be a really confronting question to ask. So that might be challenging for people. And to that, I say, lean into that challenge. Look at it as an experiment. What would happen today if I asked myself, 3 times today, what do I need right now? And then I did that thing. Imagine. Could be cool.
It's hard. It's hard. And the answer is not always clear. Sometimes I'm like, do I need that bowl of potato chips? Yeah, totally. That's been my thing lately. Oh man, the stress chips.
Stress chips. You should market that. That is good.
Ridiculous.
Well, I think that rest and asking ourselves what we need in any given situation is a great place to end today. So thank you so much again for being here. I really enjoyed spending time with you. And although I'm not certainly feeling physically 100%, this is definitely filling my cup. So I'm really grateful for the time.
Yay. Awesome. It was so good to see you.
You too. Let's not let it be 10 years this time.
I know.